thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I'm excited to talk to you a little bit today about brand and how I think about it, and in particular, how you can use brand as a competitive weapon. And we'll talk about that. It's great to see the hands about how many of you have seen the Concur campaign. Before I get into the details of that and the logic behind it, I wanted to give you the framework that I use just to think about brand more holistically. So before I jump in, a little bit of history on me. Thank you for the introduction, Maya. So these are the brands that have been a part of my journey over the last 25 years or so. The first decade of my career I spent with the top 3 logos on the slide. I can proudly say I did nothing to influence those brands. I was just a lonely peon at those 3 companies, but had a great time. The last 3 on the bottom row, I like to think I did have a fair bit of influence over, and that's Salesforce, ThoughtSpot, and Brex. And so I'll give a little bit of context. You'll see some examples of the work that I've done over the years as I go through my talk, and we'll take it from there. So first things first, what is the value of your brand? And I'm going to talk about some tactics that we all in the room can use to shape it. But ultimately, when I think about brand, it's easy for people to say, oh, it's your identity, it's your logo, it's your colors, it's your NPS score. And the way I think about it, I'll just borrow from my childhood hero here, Voltron. It's really all of those things. It's the sum of the parts. But I want to focus on this talk is the things that we all can control. And so I'm going to walk you through a little framework that I built for this. It was kind of fun as Maya approached me, what I might talk about today. And before I get into Concur, I wanted to just give you a sense for how I think. So first of all, anything that we all do to shape a brand narrative starts with your company's truth. And that's your mission, your culture, what you promise to your customers, and ultimately the product differentiation that you try to focus on. And so any good campaign, any good brand story starts with your truth. And then from there, our jobs are to figure out how do we get that truth out into market in the most compelling and meaningful way possible. And when I sat down to think about this is kind of a mental, I hadn't actually written it down before, but I just wrote down how I tend to think about it. And it is a little bit of a framework, a checklist that I think through as I think about building brand campaigns. And so each of these, I'll start with proof, provocation, novelty, wit, aspiration, your category, and then, of course, competition. We'll close with that one. And so I had a good time doing this. I just put together some examples of how I think about each of these different flavors of brand building. And we'll start with category creation. This was probably the hottest term in the market, I don't know, about 5 years ago. Maybe it's jumped the shark. But I think ultimately category creation, most of us I'm sure here in the room are in the technology space. We are here to create new brands, to create new markets, and category creation I think is always going to be a big tool in your toolkit. There's 2 parts to it. One is trying to create the category, and then one is to just establish and claim that you are the biggest in your category. A couple of great examples here. It was great to hear from Camille about her work at Notion. You see NetSuite and Notion here as 2 great examples of category marketing. And then I threw a couple examples here in from Brex. Maya mentioned I've only been at Brex for 9 months, so a lot of what you're going to see predates me, but I do have a little bit of the history, and I'll share some of the thinking along the way. Brex started out as the corporate card for startups. How many of you have used Brex? Just good show of hands. Marketers are a top demographic. Hopefully we'll reduce the PO process for you with the limits on our cards. When I got to the company, I was hired to help it go up market. We started as the corporate card for startups. Over the last 2 years, we've built a lot of technology to go up market and take on expense management and bill pay and banking and travel. It's a spend platform now, but that's where we started. When I got to the company, I noticed that we'd done a bunch of really cool stuff with AI. So if you used our product, you know that we use AI to automatically capture receipts, automatically build your memos, scraping your calendar, automatically do approvals based on how you've got it set up. It's really slick if you haven't seen it. And when I thought about changing the positioning, I think there's a window right now where AI, depending on where you are in your category evolution, is a powerful lever. And so I put out the category for Brex of AI-powered spend platform. I think that window's closing. Before too long here, every company is just going to be an AI company. It's going to be a fact, but depending on where you are, that's an option. Next up, I'll talk about proof. And I worked at Salesforce I joined in 2007 when it was a little 1,500 person company. And in 2010, I did almost every job there was there. I ran customer marketing. And I started our first customer campaign, which Salesforce is still running today. You've probably seen the sign that's up on the 101 now. I think it's the Ducati sign, or maybe they've switched it to Spotify. I think they set the standard, at least in B2B, on how to do this. And now you've seen companies like Snowflake and Databricks and others join in the mix. I give Snowflake credit for always trying to be clever with how they do this, even if they don't always hit the mark. I think Databricks is also doing a really nice job. And Brex, this is another campaign that I've launched since I've been at the company. We signed a partnership and a great customer in the Boston Celtics, and so we launched that in the Boston market just a couple months ago. I think the key to this is actually hitting the customer benefit and establishing your category at the same time. And some companies do it well. Kudos to any of you that have negotiated with the Fortune 500 on the other side, on the customer side. Those PR teams don't always make this possible, so my hat goes off to you. Wit is our next category, and this one is fun. And let's face it, we all got into marketing at least in some way to have fun. And you can see some examples here. Airbnb, that billboard is right by my house, and so I always chuckle. They're promoting all their new categories, and they do a great job with this. It tends to be something done more regularly in the B2C landscape, but B2B folks are having fun with it too. StatSig is an example of a company that's really doing some cool things here in the WIT department. Funny story about them, they're a Brex customer. Is anybody from StatSig here today? I just learned this, it's a kind of a fun story. Their team didn't believe in out-of-home marketing, but Brex has this program where we give you rewards if you use our corporate card, and we let you use those rewards to buy billboard space. And so we were their gateway drug into billboards. And now they've been doing an amazing job. If anybody here in San Francisco, you see they're testing a lot of different ads, and it's a fun one to watch. I got to meet Sarah at Vanta last night at dinner and love what Vanta is doing. This ad probably has made me smile more in the last couple of years than any other one I've seen, because how do you take something as dry as SOC 2 compliance and make it fun? And I think they just nailed it with this ad. So every time I drive by it, a little golf clap for you, Sarah. Aspiration, we heard about from Camille, and it's not surprising that I have that here on the top. You've got two examples of campaigns that they've run. I also had Notion in the category creation department. They did a nice job promoting their docs and their wikis and their notes. When I always thought those ads personally were a little busy. They were creating the category, but it was very product heavy. I really liked it when they put this line out there, for your life's work. And it's fitting that Camille's whole talk was about emotion, because this spoke to me. I think it does a beautiful job of combining emotion with this broader category of work, and in particular how their audience thinks about their product. So kudos to them for that. I think this category is actually really hard to do. Aspiration is a bit of a fleeting thing. If you're McDonald's, I'm loving it, or you're Nike, just do it. It's easy. But for most of us in the B2B world, it's a little harder. So Notion's figured it out. Brex tried this a few years ago when we were actually making a big push into the down market of SMBs. And I think it's a beautiful campaign, but it's harder to know what we do and why. And so I think it's been smart of us to evolve into different things. Novelty is the next one on the list. And shout out to Maya at Segment. Every time I drive by that billboard on the 101, I just love the novelty of the 3D dimension to it. Right? It's just something unique and special that stands out. And so anytime you can find a way to do that as a marketer, it can be a powerful lever. The other one here is Intercom. Anybody from Intercom here? Intercom has this billboard on the 101. I think it might even still be up. It was up not that long ago. How many people scratched their head when they saw this billboard? How many people saw it, first of all? A lot of people. How many people liked it? All right, cool, some hands. It's one of those ones that I had to read it a couple times, what the heck is happening here? But I found myself thinking about it over and over again, being what were they trying to do? What was in the mind of the marketer? Intercom markets to marketers. And so from that perspective, I thought it was really clever. Brex just did something last month that some of you probably saw. How many of you saw our Cybertruck floating around San Francisco? Oh, not as many people. Okay. Well, we tried to make a splash with this, and I would say the novelty factor of it is that the Cybertruck just hit the streets. It just got, it came into San Francisco probably 2 months ago, and when I saw the first one go by, I was like, wow, that thing is just like eye-catching. And then, like literally 2 days later, I got an email from a Cybertruck owner, enterprising young man, who was like, hey, I think this could be a good billboard opportunity for Brex. He obviously knows that we're willing to try new things. And so we thought about it for a hot second and just said, heck yeah, let's give it a try. And so we wrapped it with this created the smartest card on the road and generated a ton of buzz on social, although many of you didn't see it, which is too bad. And it was super fun in the city. We drove some of our customers' products around, dropped off for finance teams. It was a moment. And so that was just a great example of trying to catch novelty with a unique opportunity. The Cybertrucks have now been recalled, by the way, so we snuck in just the right time. The next category is provocation. And this is probably my favorite. I think this is where we as marketers can push people to think different. Apple made that line famous, but ultimately this is what I think all of us are trying to do. It's what our best sellers are trying to do. They're trying to be challenger sellers. I think of the OG here, Twilio, Ask Your Developer, as being one of the best examples of this. Like this ad, I was just like, so good. It came out back in the time when developers were being called the new kingmakers, the hoodies were emerging, there's a lot of power in the world, and then to kind of push CIOs and IT leaders to say, ask your developer, they're the cool kids. Brilliant. So I think they set the standard. I did my favorite campaign at ThoughtSpot was a campaign called Dashboards Are Dead. And this was like my best digital campaign ever. It had like 3x the response rates, the lowest CPLs by a large margin of anything we ever did. And it gave us confidence to actually run a billboard campaign. So it started off just kind of proving it over digital, and then really the breakthrough there was we were launching a PLG motion, and so getting billboards are generally a little bit better when you're trying to build broad awareness and you have a CAC that backs it up. But the thing that actually got it over the line was that, plus my CEO being a former seller, really loved the idea of warming up senior buyers with some awareness prior to getting in the meeting. And if you're thinking about how to sell a billboard campaign, that's actually what got that one done. When you're thinking about talking to your bosses. And then lastly, another knock here, or shout out here to Segment on this Good Morning LA campaign. How many people saw that on the 101? Yeah, provocative as well. Definitely made me scratch my head for a second. I think for their target market, it hit the mark because it got you thinking, it got you engaged, and that's ultimately what these campaigns are really about. It got a little cropped here, but Brex took a stab at this too with Don't Charge It, Brexit. This ad worked a lot better before what happened in the UK. This is an old one. But again, being provocative, I think, is just the best way to get people to think differently, particularly if you're an up-and-comer trying to make some noise on the scene. And that brings me to Salesforce, the ultimate provocateur in B2B. The no software logo, I think, is about as provocative as it gets. This picture, I also used it because actually my feet are in the back of this photo. This was taken in 2011 when we protest outside of Oracle Open World. They kicked us out of our speaking engagement. Benioff, being the brilliant marketer that he is, decided to make a big scene out of it. We got signs, we protested. A lot of what I did at Salesforce cut my teeth on competitive, and it's a good segue to the next step because competitive marketing, we did a lot of really cool things against Oracle and primarily Microsoft over the years. I'll save some of those details for another day, but it's what I think laid the foundation for me thinking about competitive being a potential option from a brand perspective. And so I'll give Salesforce a shout out. They're one of the few companies that actually is using brand not to punch up, but to just establish their credibility as the leader. It's pretty amazing that for all these years, they've had such dominant market share in the second biggest category in applications, CRM. The rest of these examples, though, are about people punching up. And I think that's the opportunity with competitive, is you can punch up and grab onto a larger competitor. And I'll just call out Single Store here first. If anybody has seen that, they put a sign right after one of Snowflake's signs on the 101, and it said, "You just sped past Snowflake. Welcome to the club." Brilliant. Like, Snowflake was a company in my ecosystem when I was in data. I just love this ad. Kudos to them. You've got Statsig again on here. And then I thought it was really clever, this example with Airtable. ClickUp saying, I think the line says, save one day every week, and Airtable says, this is how. Clever. I'd love to know the logistics behind how they pulled that off, because the timing with billboards isn't always that easy. But lastly, Concur. And that leads us to the brand campaign that we ran just at the end of last year for a few months. Many of you have probably seen this if you have driven around the city. I saw a show of hands earlier. How many people thought this campaign was good? How many liked it? Okay. How many thought it was bad? Okay, a few hands. I saw a bold hand go up over here. I love the confidence. Yeah, and I'll kind of give you the history of this, and then we'll talk about the pros and cons. So Brex started out, as I've mentioned, as a corporate card for startups. We've then moved into the expense management market, where we help you do your expenses, and we help you do a whole lot more. Concur has 65% market share. And as we thought about changing people's perceptions of who Brex is, because Brex is a beloved corporate card, but we do a whole lot more. We were thinking, how can we attach ourselves? And sometimes attaching to a competitor can be the fastest way to get people to know that your category changed. And so that was like the first part of the brief. So how can we maybe go after Concur? And when I joined Brex, we were already thinking about this. There was a brief, people were talking about it, how do we do it? I sort of inserted myself midway through the process, and the story is we were thinking about all kinds of different ways. Like, they do it this way, we do it that way. The creative options were crazy. Where I came at it is that there's usually like one main idea in any good creative brief. And the key to us was that people generally, and I'm not trying to be cruel to this Concur, they've done phenomenally well, people generally don't like this product. I'm sure many of you have used Concur, and it's not uncommon to hear people say, I hate Concur. That was the brief. And that's where this line came from. This was a line that someone had written in the Concur line, was something that was written in one of the many documents that I saw, and I said, that's it. That's the one that speaks to like the anguish that people feel. And we did that one along with a couple other lines here. You hate doing expenses, honk if you concur. And the one here that's what's slower than this traffic, expenses with Concur, that's been up. It's probably still up, actually, here in the Bay Area. We're getting some great rollover time on that ad. What happened with this is that I liked that the room was split. Not everybody loved it. We got a lot of feedback on social. People reached out to the executive team. People talked to me. Some people thought it was awesome. And then some people were like, oh, it's got too much Concur in it. You're giving them too much airtime. Why did you do this? And ultimately, the beauty of this is that it got people talking. And that's what I liked about it, is that it hit people here. And I think that's, no matter what you do, if it's wit, if you're trying to be provocative, if you're trying to do anything with your brand, it's making people feel something. That was the point of Camille's talk, and that's really what we were going for here. And by that measure, it was an incredibly successful campaign. We, metrics-wise, we drove hundreds of thousands of people to our website. We drove millions and millions of dollars of pipeline. It's been super successful for us, but ultimately it's the thing when I talk to people and they go, oh, you're at Brex, I saw the Concur ad, and that made me feel something. And that's ultimately what I think we are all trying to do. I'm going to wrap with a summary of all the different things I just went through, and I'm going to do this in rapid fire. I just want to see a show of hands. Think about your company, all the different weapons that I've just gone through here. I'm going to go a show of hands down through the list. Raise your hand as I go through them for if that's the one that you want to try for your brand next. Ready? Category. A few hands. Proof. A few more. Witty. Who wants to be witty? Everybody wants to be witty. Aspiration. All right. A good number of hands for that. I like it. The hard one. Novelty. Okay. Probably the least so far. Provocative. Okay. Some good hands there. And then how many want to go after their competition? Oh, a good number of hands there. All right. I must have rubbed off. That's my talk for today. Thank you all for listening.